Hi, this is John Wren. Each Saturday morning, we talk about starting new groups. I've been starting groups for over 20 years. I've learned some things, but I'd like to learn from you too. If you've started a group recently, either online or meeting face to face, I'd like to hear how you did it, why you did it. I'll share a bit of my experience with you too. We do this each Saturday morning at 10:30. I'm the founder and CEO of Small Business Chamber of Commerce, Inc. We're here in our world headquarters. You can see my washing machine behind us. We're just to the north of the University of Denver, and we are hoping to associate with them more closely as we continue to grow. Our mission is to strengthen the grassroots in business and politics, to provide more real help to people who are starting real businesses, and do that in cooperation with local chambers of commerce and others. And we're looking for people to start Idea Cafe startup workshops. And we hold one here as a model group each Friday from 2 to 3:30 at Panera Bread, 13th and Grant. Then we're online here each Saturday morning. If somebody's starting a new group, either one of our Idea Cafe startup workshops or any group, you're welcome to join us. I thought I'd talk today a little bit about Socrates Cafe. We started a group. It was the Friday after 9/11 was our first meeting. That's been a while, and that particular Socrates Cafe met again last night, and we had 12 or so people there. I may be the only one from that very first meeting that still goes, but it's a very healthy, thriving group. It's got a good mix of people in it, and we have a good conversation nearly every Friday night. We've started a new group at the University of Denver in the Anderson Academic Commons, what used to be called the Penrose Library. It's been totally remodeled. It's a wonderful place. And we're there each Saturday, 6:30 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. If you come in the Anderson Academic Commons, walk in the main entrance there on the south side of the building. You bear to the left, you'll see us there in current periodicals. It's a good place to meet. It's pretty quiet there on Saturday nights. If it's ever really rowdy, we can move to a closed conference room, but that hasn't been necessary. We've been meeting for a couple of months now. But the Socrates Cafe was inspired by Chris Phillips' book by the same name, Socrates Cafe. Chris was going around the country sort of like Johnny Appleseed. He'd put a notice up on bulletin boards, hold a meeting, and move on to the next town. He may have been in Denver. I don't think so, but he might have been. But his book was, for sure. I saw it in the tattered cover, picked it up, read it, and sent a few emails out to people. There were bulletin boards back then. I put them up on bulletin boards. We had the actually Idea Cafe. We called it the Idea Association back then. We had one of the first business bulletin boards in Denver. We were on Denver Freenet, which was hosted by University of Colorado Health Science Center. They tried to get the Denver Chamber of Commerce and other business groups to put something up. Nobody would, but we did. And so we were online before the World Wide Web on Denver Freenet. And I got the word out through that. We had a few people saying they were coming, and then 9/11, that was on a Tuesday. And the people that had said they were coming, I emailed them and I said, do you think we should still meet, or do you think we should put it off? And there was not one exception to this. Everybody said, no, we really need to meet for sure now. So that was our first meeting, the Friday after 9/11, the Denver Socrates Cafe. We're still meeting 13th and Grant at Panera Bread, right on the corner. We're about a block from the Colorado State Capitol. And I had started other groups before that. This Idea Association that I mentioned, we had the bulletin boards on Denver Freenet. We started meeting as was originally a way to promote a TV show that I had on Channel 53. And every week it was John Wren's TV Journal. And I'd have someone from the arts and someone who had started a successful business. And they'd be on the air and then meet with us afterwards at what we eventually called the Idea Association. And I learned a lot about startup during that 6 months or so that we were doing the TV show. And one of the things I learned about startup is that most people have a couple of startup stories. And in one story, they talk about what they think people should do. And then in the private story, when you get them more one-on-one in a very small group, face-to-face, like these meetings we were having after they were on the air, they tell the second startup story, which is the real story. And the real story is that startups are messy. They're sort of like snowflakes. Everyone is just a little bit different. So these very complex startup manual approaches, they're just not bearing much fruit. If you look around the country now, you look at the statistics, fewer businesses are starting now than ever before. The more we're talking about startup these days, the fewer businesses are actually starting. So that's why we do this Idea Cafe Startup Workshop. We intend it to be an alternative to the conventional thinking about startup. I almost threw in the sponge back in those very early days. That's a couple of decades ago now, when I had the John Wren's TV Journal, and we were doing these little meetings and turned into the Idea Association. I almost stopped doing it. And I thought, if I can't find one piece of theoretical evidence that what I'm talking about makes any sense, which was you don't do market research, you don't do planning, you just, one thing leads to another, you get customers, you follow the money, it grows, that's the American way. I was talking back then about startup that way. The people that were the guests on the show at the meetings after would agree. On the air, it's a different story. But I wanted to find some confirmation from a theoretical standpoint, some research that would back up what I was saying. So I went on Denver Freenet, and back then you surfed around the bulletin boards in a different way than you do on the internet now. There was no Google, but I surfed around and I came across a citation for an article, How Successful Entrepreneurs Craft Their Strategies. And this was a very exciting thing. You probably won't have much feel for this today, but back then it was very unusual to have a citation like that was on the newsstand. This was the current issue of the Harvard Business Review. I looked at the date, How Successful Entrepreneurs Craft Their Strategy, Amar Bahidi. He's talking about exactly what I was looking for, and it's on the newsstand right now. I can drive over to Newsland, which is long gone, but and sure enough, I did. They had it. I read it, and it confirmed what I'd been talking about. Dr. Bahidi, for several years, had sent students out to talk to the founders of successful businesses. Success being defined as they made the Inc., the little magazine, Inc. magazine, Inc. 500. So these were the 500 top small businesses in America. And each year he was sending students out to interview the founders. Those interviews are written up and available, the direct raw research. But Dr. Bahidi took that research and crafted this article, How Successful Entrepreneurs Craft Their Strategies. And then later came out with a book in 1994, The Origin and Evolution of New Businesses, based on this same research. And what Dr. Bahidi had found is that successful businesses just do not start their business the way that the SBA, the Small Business Administration, says that they should start. They do not start like the SBA says that they should start. Since 1953, the SBA has been preaching this doctrine of market research, careful planning. why do they do that? I had the good fortune of finding someone who actually observed the meeting on the periphery. He was a kid, but he saw it happening. He overheard it. He knows this is fact, that President Eisenhower was summering in Denver. They needed ways to get the economy going. They'd come up with a Veterans Home Loan Program. And we're finalizing with Axel Nielsen and some others here in Denver. The president was finalizing those plans for the Veterans Home Loan Program, which would free capital from these homes that the veterans had built. They could refinance them. They'd bring money into the economy to build additional homes because they have money available to. So the Veterans Home Loan Program, and they have the idea, well, you know, some veterans, they don't build a house, but they start a business. Why don't we do something along those same lines for business? Now, Veterans Home Loan Program may have made a lot of sense. You know, you buy a piece of land, you have blueprints, you know what's going to happen. You build the house, it's a known commodity. But businesses don't start that way. President Eisenhower had no idea how businesses start. He'd had a military career, and battle plans to him sort of looked like business plans. And maybe so we ended up with this Small Business Administration in 1953, which has been a tax-funded mechanism for killing the entrepreneurial spirit in America. Now, what's the entrepreneurial spirit? It's what Dr. Behiti found. It's what I found with the guests on my show, is that successful businesses sort of just happen. They're like snowflakes. Everyone's a little bit different. Something happens, one thing leads to another. They follow the money, it grows, it builds, and it's very hard to codify. Now, a couple of years ago, the headwaters of this stream of thinking was Dr. Behiti. I got Leonard Schlesinger to admit that in an interview that I taped. He said, yeah, I should have cited Amar Behiti because he'd been at Harvard at the same time as Dr. Behiti when Dr. Behiti was doing this. But Dr. Behiti had also inspired Sarah Svarthy, and she had done research at the University of Virginia, very much along the same lines, a different methodology, but pretty much the same conclusion. Leonard Schlesinger, who at the time that the book came out was president of Babson College, and Charlie Kiefer, who is all through Peter Senge's The Learning Organization, really solid people. They wrote a book called Just Start. And it's the book I recommend now for people who are thinking of starting their own business. Just Start, Harvard Business Review Press, came out, and it talked pretty much the same way that Dr. Behiti had talked to the professional practitioner, the professor, the college student, the CPA. His Origin and Evolution of New Businesses is more of a technical book. Just Start was aimed at the mass market. It was fun to read, easy to read. You could get through it quickly, and they have a one-page summary, and it boils down to this. Get up in the morning, decide what you want to do, then go do it. Take a look at what happened, then repeat the process. And they have some buzzwords. Creation is what they call that process. That didn't catch on yet. But, Adam Smith's book, The Wealth of Nations, as I understand it from The Worldly Philosophers, the book that if you study economics, you have read The Wealth of Nations. Go take a look. Adam Smith's The Wealth of Nations. No, The Worldly Philosophers. This is in The Worldly Philosophers. One of the chapters has to do with Adam Smith. And Adam Smith wrote The Wealth of Nations, and it did not start selling like hotcakes. It was published in 1776. I had always thought that maybe it had taken off like a rocket. That's what triggered the revolution. Probably not, if you look at The Worldly Philosophers. But so anyway, we're not talking much about how to start a group here, are we? Well, we'll be here each Saturday morning. We don't have anybody joining us either. I'm doing this as a Google Plus Hangout, so it's available to the world. Anybody, anywhere that's starting any kind of a group is welcome to join us. You might forward this on to any of your friends. I'm especially interested in people who might be willing to help us start an Idea Cafe startup workshop in cooperation with their local Chamber of Commerce. It might be best, I mean, if you're an executive director or president of the board of a local chamber, that's ideal. If you're a board member, that's ideal. If you're a member of the local chamber, that's ideal. But you know what? It's okay even if you're not a member of your local chamber, and this might be a way to approach them. Maybe you're new in town and are looking for a way to not just join and sort of take 5 years to have anybody notice you, but come in and start with a bang by bringing this little startup workshop with you. It's a very, very simple format, but it's very, very powerful. I've started peer advisory groups for years. I was inspired to do that by Benjamin Franklin. In Training Magazine, they had an article about how adults learn. I'd done all kinds of seminars and workshops, and that'd be something good for me to know about. I was in current periodicals of the Denver Public Library. I think it was June 1995. Picked up a copy of this magazine. It mentioned Ben Franklin's group. I studied what I could, and we started one here in Denver back then, and I've started several since then. And so I've learned a lot about how to make successful groups start, how to help them keep rolling, and that's what we'll be talking about here each Saturday morning. But only if there's people here that want to talk. It doesn't seem to be the case this morning, so it's a beautiful day here in Denver. We'll be back next Friday morning at 10 a.m. Mountain Time. I'm always here with the Startup Show, and there the focus is startup. And if you'd like to be a guest on the show and share your story, give me a call. Number is 303-861-1447. It's 303-861-1447. You can check out the website, www.smallbizchamber.org. Be back next Saturday morning here to talk about how do we start a group? What's your experience? And bring any questions. We'll hope to have some people here, and have a great weekend. I know I'm going to enjoy mine. Thanks for watching.